You
It
should
says
do
it in the
that.
corner. I should do what? Collect questions or go live?
No, yeah, well, yes, that is your job. Well, collecting questions is something we can both do, but if we want the benefit of surprise ongoingly, then it's better if you collect them.
I'm good. Yeah, and that is what I'm going to do. I go back to school on Tuesday for teacher training, and Thursday the pupils come back. Hence the name of today's session, the back to school session.
It
We're
is
no longer in. It's not summer anymore. The weather's got really cool here,
the weather's got really cool in Paris too.
which
Like it's
causes
all crappy.
problems.
It's just raining and cold today, dreary. Which I was
It's
I was quite happy about. It's just really fucked up. So I was just complaining about the fact that my because the temperature dropped. I went outside yesterday, and we have to wear masks everywhere now in Paris.
mm,
So my glasses were fogging up like crazy, and I was like, it didn't used to do this. It wasn't that bad. I could find a way to adjust my mask, but now it's because the temperature dropped 10 degrees. So that was super annoying. And but on the plus side, or curmudgeonly plus side, because because it's the last weekend of the holiday of the school holidays, and the weather's crappy, and everybody has to wear a mask. There's nobody out in the streets. So it's like a lot less noise at night.
there's always a plus side, and does that mean you're becoming a curmudgeon?
Oh,
You're
I think I've been that for a while. There's a part of me that is. I think I
so
was known as I was generally almost always known as the grumpy French guy in most of the offices I worked in,
wow. Okay,
or in Singapore and in Chicago. London, not so much. A little bit.
the grumpy French guy.
Yeah,
That
kind
sounds
of
like
like I did have a bit, not only right, but it did have a bit of a reputation. I mean, actually, a bit. I don't know. I should ask. Maybe people, but my colleagues would go like, "Oh my god, what a fucking nightmare that guy."
that sounds like
Sorry,
a
I swore. I
name.
apologize.
You've sworn a couple of times today, but that sounds
I
like
apologize. Okay, this is a clean up. I mean, it's no longer clean, but it's supposed to be clean. Sorry.
the name of a YouTube channel, the grumpy French guy.
Grumpy French guy. How many
It
YouTube
does.
channels do you want me to have, James?
Not for you. I'm
Oh,
just
okay,
saying
great.
it could be
It
a
would be.
YouTube
It
channel.
could be a great. Remind me. I forget their names again every time. What are the names of the two grumpy Muppets?
Statler and Waldorf. Yes.
Statler and Waldorf. That's right.
I thought you were
I
going to say that
exchanged a couple of tweets with a acquaintance friend a couple of days ago about them.
because I thought you were going to say when you say what are the name of those two, I was thinking Ren and Stimpy, Beavis and Butthead,
No, we were on old curmudgeons.
Bill and Ted, Wayne and Garth,
No, not them. Statler and Waldorf.
Statler and Waldorf. So what's your mug today? You're back home.
My mug is. You know that I only have that many. I don't have that many mugs, so I'm back at the Little Prince.
Okay, I don't think I'm going to
It could have
change
been. Well, so why are we doing the mugs then?
because I
If we're not
because the
changing
thing
mugs, it's not worth it anymore.
I'll have a different one next week. And what's the t-shirt? It looks like a
T-shirt is a different one.
train spotting.
Train spotting T-shirt.
It is train spotting. What a guess. Choose life.
Good guess. Good guess.
I thought it was. I've got Yoda.
Pulling out all my old T-shirts for this thing. Oh, this is a good Yo-Yo one. I like it.
It's another chunk t-shirt. I realise I've got a lot of Star Wars t-shirts.
I'm not surprised.
So today,
I should go get a haircut.
well, that's perfect because when you go back to school, you need to get a haircut. What are all the things you need to do before you go back to school?
How old am I when I'm answering this question?
It doesn't matter because
Does it matter?
no, because
Like things like you need to get a haircut would be my mom's comments. Like I'm like, no, I don't want to get a haircut. You don't need to get a haircut.
But do you find that when the weather gets colder, when we're moving into September, does your mood change? Do you feel like, oh, the holidays are over? How do you feel about
Oh,
that?
right now I'm completely resenting. Well, I'm still not. So you're a teacher, so you do live by this rhythm. I didn't for most of my life once I left school, and I was very, very satisfied with that situation. Quite happy with it, except that France, as a country, just generally speaking, as the vast majority of the country lives by the school calendar. Maybe other countries do, and I don't realize it's entirely possible. but generally they live by the school calendar. And on top of that, I'm going to be teaching coming fall. So I'm teaching older students. So my back to school is in a couple of weeks, and I'm not a full schedule teacher or anything, but I need to think like that now. And I don't even have a full teacher schedule, and I'm already resenting the fact that my schedule is going to start revolving around the school holidays a little bit.
Is that because you're such a free spirit?
I don't know. I don't like I don't like going on vacation with everybody else. It's because
I used to call
I'm
you.
an old single guy that doesn't have children.
I used to call you the international man of mystery because I didn't know where you were going to be in the
Thank
planet.
you. And that is the main, I think, and perhaps only element of reputation, professionally and personally, I managed to curate and develop is where is Willem now? So, I mean, people professionally around the world know that I'm in different places. I don't know if that reflects well on my quality of work, but
Well, in this interconnected world, it doesn't matter where you are, you can deliver.
technically, well, so I'm only hoping with what crazy tragedies going on this year with the pandemic that more people are open to remote work, but one, they have to. But I know there's a lot of people that resented being forced into the situation.
This word resentment,
I know I brought it up a couple of times.
you have, because it's made no, but it's really made me think because in the UK we have
Tyranny of the
a
school,
bank
back to
holiday.
school. That's how I am right now.
It is.
That's how the
It is a
kids
bit like
are. They
that.
don't want to go back to school. Screw that. They don't want the summer to be over. The summer is not even technically over. It's over on the 21st of September. Where's our Indian summer anyway? I hope his son comes back. It was there last year.
This is true. When we have a bank holiday on the 31st of August, end of August, and every year I can feel
This weekend. Is this the bank holiday weekend?
it is the bank holiday weekend.
Oh.
But I noticed that as August goes by, as September approaches, I can feel my body change. I can feel
Like
I can
sagging?
feel that like that it's resentment's too strong.
No, that's
It's
resentment's a bit strong.
discomfort, that
Morosity.
like I have to get up
Morass.
early. I get up early anyway, but because I don't have to get up early, I get up early.
This
But
was
when
your. I mean, we talked about the summer holidays being your playtime, right?
yeah, but I love getting up early. But when I have to get up early, sometimes somehow it's different. And I think I remember that
It's the joy of work in our society and everything that comes with it.
I do like my job.
Yeah.
And I get nervous about going back because I want to do a good job. And I remember it was 6 or 7 years ago talking to this really, really experienced teacher. He'd been teaching like at that point over 20 years. Super experienced, amazing guy, really always seemed calm. And his classes were always calm. And he was, I don't know how he maintained control, but it was like so level-headed. It was amazing. And I was saying to him, I don't know if I remember how to teach. So I'd been teaching about eight. I'd been teaching about 8 or 10 years at that point, and he'd been teaching over 20. And he's turned to me and he said to me, "Yes, you know what? Sometimes I feel the same way when we come back in September." And the relief, the relief that I had knowing that there was someone who was really experienced who felt that same kind of discomfort, that same kind of back to school feel. I felt so much better. And I wondered, what do you think that is? How come? Even
How
someone
come you?
so long,
Which part?
the
Sorry.
part about the first bit about how come someone who's been teaching so long still feels that kind of discomfort about coming back to school.
Well, I mean, it seems natural because you have a break. So as soon as you start something, there's tons of opportunity for your mind to go into doubt about the thing that you stopped. There is a strong rhythm of stopping and starting new year. Mm-hmm. So you have a second new year, arguably maybe even a third if you consider your birthday to be another year. Mm-hmm. So it's not even part of my grumpiness. It's not even a full year, but the year goes from September to June barely. But anyway, that the fact that there is this strong rhythm and that you have a break and that you have everything, you even though you've been doing this whole thing before, there is, I think, I mean, you tell me otherwise, but I believe there probably is a part of the same kind of I was going to say apprehension, but I don't know if it's exactly the right word, or just anticipation that
Mm,
a student or a pupil has, or a kid, because you have a whole new cohort of new people to teach. You don't know how the kids are going to be. You don't know how the dynamic of the class is going to be. You don't know what's going to happen this year. You've just spent 2 months, or not, like a few weeks, whatever, it was less than 2 months, but now. um, but you've had a few weeks of just like not having to think about all of that. So there's a starting over. And with the starting over, it feels like it's easy for the mind to drop it off and to go, oh wait, do I know how to do this thing again?
mm,
And it's justified because you also have a whole new set of pupils, and there's a lot of novelty in that. And at the same time, tons of repetition because you've been doing it for years. And so you
mm.
know exactly how to be. And as soon as you're going to be in front of the pupils the first hour, you're like, oh, yeah, I got this.
That's true.
It's like
That's
riding a
true.
bike. I mean, it's riding a bike doesn't exactly do the analogy justice, but I started taking the shared bikes in Paris this year, and I should have done that last year when I moved back, but I was a little bit intimidated. I was intimidated. It was more than a little bit because I didn't take them. I was intimidated by the traffic, by the fact that I hadn't taken a bike in years, by the fact that I don't know, whatever. I found reasons not to need it. And as soon as I got on a bike, I was like, oh, yeah, I got this. I know how to cycle. It's fine.
There's, you've made me think from what you said about the rhythms thing.
Hmm.
In, we've both read it. You've been using it. I don't know how recently you've been using Deep Work by Cal Newport. He talks
Yeah, I need to
about,
get back to it.
doesn't he talk about the rhythm of being like having time when you're not doing anything and then going back into being super
He
concentrated?
also talks about that. I remember just the first thing that pops in. Yeah, yeah, totally talks about that. And he talks about something that I've lived through a lot because I've moved around. And he gives this example of a teacher he knows who decided, like, arbitrarily, they're only going on. She's only going on. I think it's a she, going on 5 trips a year. That's it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And travel is such a disruption to a rhythm. So my rhythm has been traveling, and it's true. Like, so living full time traveling, and people who do this as full on digital nomads have found ways. Some have found ways to organize themselves because you have to dedicate a portion of time, if for myself, sometimes large, and or large amount of mental space to working out your travel, where you're doing things, etc. And I just had to go back home to my family, as you know, and I didn't get much done. It's so difficult to get anything done in a different rhythm. And I took the last couple of days since I've been back not doing much either. Just getting back home, doing laundry, just getting used to being enjoying being back home, but not feeling like I've produced a lot more. For example, I started this series of articles and I was hoping that I would publish this weekend, and I didn't progress at all this week.
Mm.
Uh,
I think you might have to
Now, I could
explain what.
berate myself and say I should have. It's true. But you read that kind of book and you're like, it's so true that traveling disrupts a lot.
I think you're going to have to explain digital nomad.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I thought that was obvious
What?
now.
I
Well,
don't think it
now we're
is.
all digital nomads anyway. Not nomads. We're digital sedentary people, but not we. Some people aren't. So that's always important to remember that it's a bit of a privilege to be able to work from home. Um, Not a bit. It is. A digital nomad, or whatever other name it has since I did it 8 years ago, is basically somebody who lives, works online, works remotely, and travels doing it. So there are some companies that are entirely distributed. So Basecamp, WordPress, and Buffer come to mind.
Mm. Oh,
Um,
I didn't know about Buffer. Okay.
yeah, Buffer. Yeah, Buffer. Buffer is completely remote. Um, so people who are employed by those companies, or you just a freelance like I am. There's
Mm.
tons of freelancers just either spending a few months at a time in different spots, or traveling
Mm.
all the time, or I mean, the likelihood, if they're actively working and earning money, even if you might have like stints where you're just traveling, you probably are spending an extended amount of time in one spot,
Mm.
meaning
Mhm.
at least a month,
Mm.
or maybe three. or maybe you just realize that actually it's better to live full time in Bali after a while. Not everybody, and I know people who are still traveling full on, but typically, even those guys, I know people in my field who've been doing that for, I can't remember now, 4 or 5 years, maybe
Wow.
7. No, not 7. Although I don't know. Like they're kind of the rock stars of. They're not one of the rock stars of people who are in my current line of work, and they're really cool. They do a lot of well, they're starting again to do a lot of speaking at conferences and stuff like that. And I believe their schedule is so they're traveling always. They don't have a set base, but they don't travel like every 3 days, right? Typically, I mean, they might
Mm.
if they have a busy schedule for work, but otherwise, I think like most people, and that's what I ended up doing when I was doing it. I did it for a couple of years, really. I was spending 6 weeks at a time. Like the last couple of stops were Hong Kong and Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai had some work, so I rented a studio for 6 weeks. Um, you know, I was kind of just enjoying town and being there rather than, and I did have times, you could, if you could bring in the money, you can take a week and go do more of a traveling experiences stuff. But yeah, generally that's the term anyway. It's just like you're working remotely and you're traveling at the same time. You don't have a fixed base.
And when you were doing that, were you working really hard? At, like, did you have a schedule? Did you have a rhythm to what you were
That
doing?
is, I think I mentioned that in the episode that we talked about productivity tools and note taking in Evernote and Rome. The
Hmm.
time when I started to do that and working on the beach in Malaysia is the time I started to organize myself a lot more than I used to. Even during my travels, actually, I
Right.
organized myself to be able to, because I tend to overthink everything. So the mental space travel plans take is huge for me.
Mm.
Um, Anything to do with so I'm technically on one hand it's a flaw because I should really sometimes not spend that much time doing things, but I also really do enjoy looking at all sorts of options. So if you have no commitments and you're traveling and you can go anywhere and you can do anything, that's a lot of things. So I would look at all the places to go and
Yeah.
things to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
know,
so
well, right
true.
now I have like a whole host of tabs reopen because I want to decorate my flat. I need to get a frame for this thing because I ordered one. I ordered two. I ordered one that broke on the way. So, and then another one that never arrived because it was just the beginning of the lockdown. And so I still don't have a frame for this thing. And I want some new wall decoration. It's a specialty of mine to not have any wall decoration because that way I'm not committing to any wall decoration.
Oh,
As
I'm
long
a
as the
bit like
wall
that
is
as
white,
well.
it could be anything.
I'm like that
But
too.
I've been here for a year. I want to stay a bit longer, and I'm like, I had postponed it at first because I had invested in some furniture, needed to
Mm.
get some work, needed to get income and work. And now it's a year on, and money's coming in and out. It's been a pretty lean year because of the pandemic, and I'm like, oh come on, I should choose at least a couple of things. It doesn't have to be anything expensive, right? So I have almost chosen a couple, but I'm waiting a few days to make sure that maybe there's something else.
There is definitely something in this idea of rhythms, like the move. Maybe it's seasonal. I don't know. Like the working really hard, the move from
Actually, yeah, I completely went on a
summer
tangent.
to.
What were you looking for? You could bring it back to what you're thinking of the
I am,
rhythms.
but that's my
So I
job.
did
That's
have a rhythm. I did have a rhythm. I absolutely had a strong a rhythm. I've kind of gotten a little bit looser at my house this year with that, but uh, I needed a stronger routine to be able to work while I was traveling and while my environment around me was changing. So I was like, I need some kind of routine. And that turned out to be how do I wake up? How do I get to work? How do I organize all my stuff in my computer so all my work is in one place and all my thoughts are in one place, which was Evernote. Um,
and this is while you were
but yeah,
traveling. But now, what's interesting now is like you've had a lot of things happening. You've been moving around France into Spain, a lot of family stuff.
yeah,
So my question then becomes, how do you get back into being productive?
it's a good question. I mean, that's reading deep work is something that was helping. I don't know. I don't have any other answer than just at some point you start dilly-dallying, stop dilly-dallying and just do it.
Because I think that
But it's not very
there,
helpful, maybe.
I, there are things that I've put off that I could have done, especially last week. And like one of them was I have asthma. One of them was like contacting, and this is going around in my brain right now, right? So I have asthma. I have a yearly asthma checkup, and the doctor's been texting me, like, set up, or the GP send their automated text messages, set up your asthma checkup. We can do it online, and I just kind of haven't done it. It's like, yeah, I'll do it, and I haven't done it, and now
I need to do the same thing for the dentist, and I need to get blood work done that was supposed to happen during the lockdown and never did. So now I have to do that and get
and
a
I'm
just doctor checkup, general.
yeah, and I'm annoyed with myself because I had the time. I was off school, and then I didn't do it.
Yeah,
And
but
now
you're
I'm
off
going,
school, so
yeah, but in my mind,
you're
I'm like,
off.
oh,
You're like, you're off. Just do that later,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But did you
yeah.
have a date to do it? Did you have a did you have a date to do
No,
it?
it wasn't scheduled. It wasn't scheduled at all. And I think you asked a great question
And
there.
that's not the most difficult. Those like paperwork and stuff like that are not very difficult for me. I'm not the best in the world, as we talked about in another episode. I'm not super productive, but it's the deep work stuff that is difficult to get to. And whether it is because you actually genuinely have a lot of stuff going on in your life, work obligations, girl, not you, just
Maybe.
general. I'm speaking
No,
to
I
the
know,
audience.
but
I'm speaking
I know.
to whoever's going to watch this in the future. Do we
But
have
it's
anybody
true. But
watching?
I question whether people really do have a lot going
No,
on.
we don't. Huh?
I
Well, of
question
course,
whether.
I know. Of course they don't, but they can't hear that. People think they do have a lot of things going on.
True. Okay. That's true.
The vast majority of people are, just. I mean, this is horrible, but it's
Avoiding.
No, I was going to say they're drowning in a thimble.
Okay, you have to explain what you mean by that.
Oh,
What
this
do you mean?
is I'm straight up translation from a French saying. Except that I changed. It's usually the saying is drowning in a glass of water rather than a thimble. But I thought the thimble was a good, but you didn't get it. So it's not a good thing. But you get that drowning in a thimble will be quite difficult.
Yeah.
It feels like you're making drama out of something that is like, no, it's just like you're in a thimble of water. You're okay.
There's a really, really cool video.
Or drowning in a glass of water is the French.
Drowning in a glass of water makes sense to me too. There's a really cool video of this little boy who's bawling his eyes out and he's hanging onto this rope in the water. I don't know if you've seen it. Really short video. No. And he's crying and he's struggling. And this adult,
I've seen it. Yeah.
This adult or his like some relative just comes along and pushes his feet and he stands up. And he doesn't realize the water is really, really shallow.
Yeah, there's absolutely that. A lot of people live a lot of their busyness and overwhelming. I don't know if there's a word for that, but you get the overwhelmed state like that kid. But but when you see the kid at the beginning, I think he's genuinely struggling.
Yeah, he is.
So that's why I'm like, you can't just say to somebody, "Hey, just get it together," because they're genuinely struggling and they can't see it.
Now this is interesting.
Now it's true when it's true where it's true, and it's not true where it's not true. So I can't also it might be for anybody watching or listening to this. This may or may not be your case, and it might not be helpful because you don't know. And if you're the kid, I'm like, no, I'm not helping you get up, so you don't know.
There's two bits to this. So last week,
at least
my wife and I have been dealing with some big stuff about having children, what we're going to do about it, and all of that. And I found that and we're looking at surrogacy. So we're filling in all these forms and thinking about it. It takes up a lot of my emotional thinking, and for both of us. And then we spend an hour or something looking at the form, and we've completed it, and we're moving forward on it. But I don't feel like doing anything else after that at all. I'm like done. I don't want to do any...
If you take the examples and subscribe to the thoughts from deep work, he's like, at some point you're depleted.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, because you read that he mentions at the beginning of the book on, if you spend your time on other stuff, you're just going to be depleted. You don't have any opportunity to do deep work.
Yeah.
Whether the work that you're doing, and by the way, I mean, the shallow work doesn't, or other work doesn't mean it's not important. You have to do it. Filling the forms, taking care of the dentist, it's all stuff that you have to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Um, Arguably, even thinking about, for you to think about what you're doing about children with your wife, it can be deep work. Not all of it. Filling the
Yeah.
form might not be, but some of it's deep work.
That was definitely deep work for us. It definitely was. But the
Yeah.
interesting point was afterwards, I just didn't want to do it.
No. So,
And even
uh,
Davina said, like, I feel drained now. I don't really want to
yeah,
do it. I'm like, yeah, it is.
I was
It
hesitating
really is.
when I first read the book, and I was like, "What, energy depleting? No, I'm not sure." And then the more I was reading, and the more I was like, "Yeah, I completely agree. At some point, you're drained." And so the week back was tiring. Traveling altogether is tiring, and it takes a while to get back into your other kind of normal, more productive habitat. And it's not that you can't get stuff of deep work done, or like valuable work done when you're not home. You can,
Mm,
but it
mm.
really depends on the circumstances. And just to elaborate on mine, I had to suddenly travel for a funeral, and my father's sick, and he's having his first chemo treatments, and so there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of stuff going on in the family. I had a lot of discussions, and that took a bit of my time for with a potential new client that I don't know if anything's going to come out of it, but there's that. So I didn't do nothing. I did some stuff, but I didn't progress on some of what I would consider to be the latest deep work projects, like writing this series of posts about strategy. And I had my book about the fool that I didn't progress on, although I did order a couple of other books on that one. And
What's
looking at the
now
books.
the thing I'm realizing from what you're saying,
Yeah,
this, which feels like a revelation to me, but it probably isn't. If I've got really strong routines that I can have with me for when I move around, that allows me to get into a productive state much quicker.
sure.
And I'm it sounds to me that sounds really obvious. But the things like the waking up, or for me, like knowing where my wedding ring is, where my watch is, or where my phone is before I go to bed, so that if I'm on the move, like we went to Edinburgh like a couple of weeks ago, and as long as I know where, where the car keys are, if I know where those things are, then everything seems to work. And especially when we're moving around. When I'm at home, it's easy because I'm at home. I know where everything is. But there's this little bit of cognitive like stress required. Like, where is that? Oh yeah, it's there. And like the phrase I've heard is we're cognitive misers. We only want to use the minimum amount of energy we can. That's
Yeah,
why habits are so powerful,
yeah.
because they save
The
energy.
one habit I'm interested in that I don't have, or the mode rather, because you know the deep work modes of deep work that he talks
Yeah,
about, like the
yeah, yeah,
four,
yep.
like there's four, I think. Uh, but he talks about the one being the, so most of them revolve around strong routines and habits,
Yeah,
except the
yeah,
journalist one
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
about just fit it in whatever you can. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I want to know more about that.
And
Because I
switch it
don't
on.
really know. I don't know. I can for certain specific things. So like I can switch it on if it's for my work, for example, because I've done that remotely and I'm experienced in that, and I know how to think through a brief whenever and wherever I am. I can lock myself up. I would like to do that more with writing. Some circumstances I can, but not. I'm not at all as good as a journalist, like at all, like really not. And I'd love to be.
Because
I
I
just
can do
need. That's
it.
why I just need to write more, basically. So
I can do it in the classroom. If I've discovered if I've got a question that I'm answering, I can write a really good exam answer under pressure, no problem. What I found is, if I create the question that I want to answer for a blog post or whatever it is, I almost approach it like doing an exam essay, and for me that works. But even then, when I'm in school, there's a fixed amount of time, there's a deadline, there's a certain push to produce. When I'm at home, I'm like, yeah, I just like play Minecraft. Like, I I discovered another really cool game that is just like so simple. I'm like, I could waste time on this, or I could sketch out some ideas from blog post.
but what I started doing coming back here was first get back onto my new dieting schedule.
Oh yeah,
Well,
you're
new
doing
from
16
August, because I
8.
broke it. I broke it while I was away. Um, and the last two nights were choices on reading.
Mm,
Like last night, I was like, oh, should I watch something or play a video game? I was like, no, I'm going to keep reading.
nice.
So I've done a lot more of that. So, and also I'm becoming wary about, because I think that a lot and I say that a lot, productive as a word. I'm wary of it because I easily use it to berate myself or kind of
Yes,
like go on a guilt trip.
me too.
And so, for example, Thursday, I was looking at ways to get back home, and the tickets were, of course, very expensive because it was the last few days of the summer vacation.
Mm.
So that wasn't part of the plan. I wasn't going to go down south of France at this particular time of year. I was going to wait until the school started. Anyway, the funeral wasn't planned. And I thought I'd stop at my grandfather's place. He's about to turn 98 in a couple of weeks, 10 days actually. And well, one, it really worked with the tickets. And two, I thought, well, one person died. He's not going to be around for much longer. I don't see him very often. It'll be nice.
Yeah.
And
you wrote an amazing Twitter thread.
thanks. I recorded him. He had some good stories. But my first point there, before I forget and go on another tangent,
yeah,
was that it felt, I was like, oh, that wasn't productive. I did have that thought after it when I got back on Friday. I was like, I was not being productive.
wow.
And then I was like, well, wait a minute. I say that people matter to me, my family matters to me, and the people I love matter to me. So spending time with them matters to me. That is not, it's not a lot. It's not a loss of productivity. I didn't write my thing. It's true.
Yes.
And it's a reminder that there's a lot of choices I make in my life where I'm not progressing on things that are valuable towards my career or my intellectual development or money. But that's not necessarily, I mean, I have to remind myself that it's a choice I've made.
Now, this is
And
really
there's
great.
a lot of times
This
I
is really
decide
great.
that I want to have a coffee with somebody because they're a friend and I want to spend time with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be forwarding my career, writing things or doing other things. But actually, I'm like, I really like to hang out with people.
The thing I like is, from deep work and from other books I've read, is knowing what's really important for you
Yes.
allows you to make choices.
Yes.
And often for the younger people I teach, knowing what's really important for them is really hard because in the school system, it's set. It's set from parents, it's set from peers, it's set. No one wants to sit there and look.
Really hard for everyone, James, not just young people.
You think?
Yeah. It requires a level of thinking about what is important to you that I think a lot of people are either, well, anyway, that's my thinking. Maybe I'm wrong.
I know I have a particular strength and talent for that area.
I was going to say, maybe I said maybe I'm wrong because I think some people don't think about that at all. And if they're like, I have also come across people who are like, why would you ask yourselves these kinds of questions?
The only people I come across who are like that are the pupils. The teachers get that kind of conversation, thinking about what's important. And so much of the discussion around teaching recently has been, well, why are we doing this? Oh, we're doing it because ultimately we want what's best for the pupils. So that kind of conversation about why are we doing it, I'm naturally drawn to it. And it's always been my thing to get super clear about, like, why are we doing this? What do I stand for? Where do I stand on this? What am I about? What's my purpose? I'm all over that kind of stuff. Like I was saying before we started.
I have a whole big post to write about why, though. I'm suspicious of why, and I don't like Simon Sinek. Start with why.
You don't like it?
No.
Because I read his book, and
I need to read it. I've not read it. I've only watched his TED Talks. And I know that most of the people who are professionals in my field or in training fields and use it like crazy, like the Bible. I've never read the book.
It's a really
so maybe if I read the book, it'll make sense to me. But I don't like the idea.
It's a really simple,
true. But
it's really simple. It's a really easy book to read, and I think you naturally do that. I do it. I was saying before recording, I'm that person who are in the meeting who will ask stuff, and then they'll say, "Go do it." So I'm that person who ends up doing lots of stuff because I ask, "Well, why don't we do this?" But that idea of asking why, and clarifying the purpose of it, it's very natural for me. For my wife, no. She's like, "Let's go do it." I'm like, no. Why? Like, so we partner
I'm a mix
up very
between
well.
Those two things.
We complement each other really well. So
that's great.
Yeah, being able to move between those two ways of thinking is, I think, really, really important. So that was a whole tangent for one thing and a whole idea, which is really useful. The other thing that I notice is this whole thing about cognitive misers
Yeah.
is, and the whole thing about that you were saying before, where people get themselves busy with stuff and they don't really know what, like the drown. What did you call it? Drowning in a glass of
People,
water.
no, but people are overwhelmed with their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a vast generality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like, you know, there's a lot of talk in France. It's huge in the culture. I don't know if I don't know. I think it's as big in the UK, but you tell me of burning out. Just I'm about to go on a burnout. I'm about to burn out
Oh wow.
from
That was a
work,
little bit
and
of
it's
that.
big, and it's used as burnout, burnout in French.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that means like you're just burned out from work, and you go get a letter from your doctor, and you're off work for a little while.
There's a little bit of that in with teachers talk about being busy and not having any time, and being busy and not having any time, and I'm like, okay, at what point is this an excuse, like to
It's
not
a,
be, not do the things that you could do? Because I'm not willing to compromise on seeing my parents and spending time with my wife and hanging out with my nephews, and I still want to do my job really well. So there is that whole world of drowning in a glass of water. But the point I want to make is that the pupils I teach, they're young,
Mhm.
and their world is changing so rapidly, hormonally, physically, emotionally, everything going on, the
Yeah,
pressures, the wonder about what am I going to do in my life, the parents, the teachers saying all that stuff. And then from what you were saying, it's really made me think that I will then go and have a go at them sometimes about wasting their time when their minds just, they really are like life. They are that little kid, like, and I'm not being very helpful by saying to them, oh, you just get on with it. But
no,
what they really need is me to sit down with them and go, look, this is what's going on, you can handle this, here's how. And I
yeah.
don't do that very often. I do it sometimes. I don't get the opportunities to do it very much. Sometimes
Well, you
I'm
probably
that.
don't really have much time to sit down with individual students or pupils to be able to have the time to do that. And as a group setting, I'm not sure how much it communicates.
I have done it and I
And
do do
I
it.
don't even know if that's. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it does make a difference as a group setting. I
I
don't know.
think it does make a difference in a
Probably
group setting, and I'm lucky
because the
enough
whole other
not to
vaster
have
thing is like,
many.
what is even wasting your time? Is that because it's the big vernacular? But we
It
only
is.
have 24 hours in the day. We're living through our lives, whatever happens. Are we really wasting time? What does that even
Yep.
mean? So
Yep.
I would
Very
tend
good.
to subscribe and agree to this when you're like, well, yes, so spending your days watching stupid shit on TV and having a brain melt out your ears is wasting time. But uh, but then again, I've done that a lot.
Sometimes I'm going to say this. I'm going to go on the record and say this. I've watched an episode of Rick and Morty and got an amazing idea for a lesson.
Great.
That's happened, and I'm quite willing
Nothing to
to.
do with booze, I hope.
I don't drink alcohol.
No, but Rick does.
Oh yeah, he does. But it's, yeah, I'd love to have a chat with Dan Harmon or just watch Dan Harmon and how he creates stuff. I'd love to.
Mhm.
So I think it does make a difference in the group setting. I wedge it into my lessons where I will talk about how you organize your time, how you can get the most out of it. And I'm quite happily, my lessons go on tangents. So they're learning about all this other stuff as well as learning the material they have to.
Yeah,
But
because I think there's a lot of. It's funny because I was talking about that with a good friend of mine I saw, and this is great for you. I don't know if we've talked about this so much. I was talking about organizing lesson plans for the classes I'm going to teach and discussing those classes. And I can't remember the exact, but it was something around that. I was saying that I didn't go on further studies. So I was thinking that because of that, I didn't get the right kind of structures and lessons to organize my time and plan it and do that as best. And my friend was like, no, nobody teaches that. Just like the kids have it because their parents or somebody else taught them. None of the teachers have time to explain to you how to organize things, how to answer, how best to manage your time, or how best to organize a study plan, or all of that. It's just like, no, they don't have time. They only have time to produce the content of the classes, not the how to. And you haven't really missed anything. So don't worry. just you're at the same level as they are or whatever. So
I find ways of wedging it in within the teaching.
I think it's interesting to wedge it in. That's my point. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, I did go to university and I thought I was missing something, even in high school. The thing I was
Oh,
missing is there are codes, particularly in French education, but also in
I
British
remember you saying
education, I'm
this.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've said this before. We talked
Yeah, you
about
have,
it.
yeah.
And if your parents or somebody else, a tutor, private tutor, somebody doesn't teach you how to organize your study time, how to redact and write an essay, how to structure it, you only get the basicest of basics from the school teacher, unless you're lucky and you have a teacher that has taken time to say how they want their stuff. But it may or may not have been useful for the rest of university. And a university, I don't think anybody's teaching you that, unless maybe if in preparation schools, maybe, but I don't know.
I did read a book.
And I might be
Oh,
talking out of I may be talking. I mean, I'm generally talking about things I don't really know about anyway.
I did read this book that was recommended to me by our mutual friend Adam,
Mhm.
but I think it's called How We Learn. I can't remember what it's called. I read it it was just over a year ago, and he talks about the
Is that the
pro.
same book that the dude from Rome was recommending? It was a
I
book
don't
about how
know.
we learn. Sorry, I cut you off. Please
It's
go.
a guy called Benedict Carey, I think his name is, who wrote it. He's a journalist. He's a bit like Malcolm Gladwell kind of guy, but he what he does is he basically says the way that you're taught, if it's done really well, can teach you how to learn everything. And he tells a few different stories about. He talks about rhythms. I found it overlap with deep work. He talks about rhythms. He talks about making the most of being bored. He talks about stop start, the finding connections between things, learning how to summarize, all this kind of stuff. And there was one point where I was going to rebuild my teaching plans around the way he talks about it. And because when I read it, I was like, oh, I do a lot of this stuff off the cuff. I didn't. It's nice to have someone recommend it.
Mm.
So, like the weird connections I make in my lessons between everything. So I might revisit that book.
That
I'll
sounds
have
like a good
to.
book. Tell me about it. I mean, tell me, share the details. I'll
Yeah, I
have a look
will.
at it.
It's. I think it'll make a good follow-on from Deep Work. In fact, I'm probably going to do a summary of that book next and put it on my
Cool.
website. But those it's really hard if nobody's teaching you how to use your time, how to get back, organize your written material, and then we do some teachers in my school, we do that. But then there's another problem, which is people like to do it in different ways, and people have different ways of doing it themselves. Or just because I do it one way doesn't mean that it's going to work for someone else.
Yeah.
So
And
sometimes
there's also how
the
you
whole
fit. Well, for me, I'm thinking, how does my stuff fit within the whole curriculum the students have? What I mean by that is the head of
this is for the new teaching gig you've got.
yeah, the head of the person responsible I was talking to last week, was telling me that actually it doesn't matter. So it was telling me something, but I was thinking about the fact that the course I have one class for the second year students, called Digital Bread Environment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm building my lesson plan around that. Fine. He recommended I combine and meet the other teacher who has something similar about digital campaigns, so like more executional rather than more contextual, which is going to be mine probably. But whatever happens, if I see how they write, I can bring stuff to the table about how they write and how to write a brief, because that's also my job, how to strategize and how to build a strategy brief and how to write better and more concisely and synthesize and all of that, which comes straight out of my professional experience, which is what they want. This is a very practical school. But I don't know at this point. I'm expecting to receive a full list of all the classes, like the different courses they're in. I suspect strongly that none of the classes is going to be how to better write in a communication professional environment. So I'll
They
have
won't
to
be.
work out how to include that. Not that that's part of my lesson plan, but I can already, like listening to you, say this, I'm like suspecting strongly that I will have stuff to bring when I see how they write and go, okay, well, you really need to improve this and this.
This could be a really useful experience for you, because what I
Oh, it's
found
going to be a useful experience for sure.
is that you have to go back to the fundamentals. You discover what the fundamentals are. Because when I read what some of my students write, I'm like, oh my God, they don't read, which is why we're here.
Oh, and I have a whole piece of work on my hands to begin with, which I think we've talked about before, about the fact that well, this is going to be different for this class, but some of them at this first and second year, first even worse, but second year, they're very young. They're coming out of high school, and I'm going to ask them to participate, and to begin to get them to participate is going to be a whole big thing in itself, from what I've been told. They're not used to that.
You mean, when you say participate, you mean volunteering ideas, suggesting,
having conversation.
Discussing. Oh wow.
The French education doesn't function like that. I mean, aside from a few exceptional teachers here and there, but just the vast majority is just, some the teacher talks, they take notes, and that's more or less it. Occasionally a question, you answer a question, it's not conversational, it's not interactive.
Sometimes my lessons are like,
I mean, sometimes it works that they're like that. And I'm not going to have a conversation for an hour and a half with them necessarily. I will have stuff to teach them, right? So there's going to be, actually, that's the other main recommendation he gave me. It's just basically just rotate what you're doing every 10, 15 minutes to avoid getting them bored.
I mean, I agree with that.
I'm sure you do that.
There are times when you need to actually have everyone shut up and listen and explain something.
Yeah.
And there are other times where there are definitely times when my lessons look like a complete mess. Like if someone was watching, they'd be like, what on earth is going on?
Now, knowing who I am, I won't hesitate going on tangents anyway, but I do have I need to have a bit of a plan for the lesson. And I would go back to basics. That is immediately the first thing I want to do. I don't know if you had a chance to read the latest post I wrote in the beginning of the series. I don't think you had, on businesses and brands. And I went back to the basics. I'm like, what is a business and what is a brand? Nice. I wrote about that. So I'm going to do the same thing there. The course is going to start on what is an environment.
Yeah, that's
what is it once you know what an environment is, what is a brand environment, and what is a digital brand environment?
My suggestion,
and I'm going to make it up because nobody's going to give me the definition. I'm going to have to put it together. Of course, there's tons of different ways I can do that. It's not difficult, but is a anyway, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, be very clear about what you want them to get by the end.
That's the thing I need to work out in the next 2 weeks.
Once I've got that, I can I have to adapt. You have to change, because with a group of young people, like, so in September, they're going to come back, and it's not going to be like another September. Who knows how they're going to be sat? Like all the windows and.
Are you all wearing masks as well? We're all going to be wearing masks. And they might change their mind in a week, but it's anyway. I don't want to go talk about the COVID.
We have to wear masks when we move around. So, but not necessarily in the classroom. Everyone's going to be spaced out.
So far, they've announced that everybody in the classroom is wearing a mask. So I was almost going to ask the dude, and this is a private school, but I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think all schools, including primary, secondary, and everything else, are going to have microphones. So how are the teachers going to have their voice carry throughout the room with their mask on? I'm wondering. I don't think whoever decided that has thought that through. Generally speaking, since the beginning of the whole pandemic, just none of the orders have been thought through whatsoever. So
you'd be surprised if everybody's quiet, and this is an old teaching trick that I find really hard because I'm quite exuberant. But if you start off loud and get quieter and quieter, they have to be quiet to hear what you're saying. If you're this is something that level-headed teacher I mentioned before would do. He talks really evenly and he talks really quietly. So everyone is like, what's he going to say? So they get very quiet that way. So I don't.
If that's something I should test that out.
Maybe something masks would make a difference, maybe not. But as long as I have an objective, and as long as I have a series of objectives that fit into a bigger objective with my lessons,
that's what I need to work out, what my bigger objective is. Yeah, I don't have a set, and I have to kind of create it. I mean, the The only other objective that I have, as far as I know, as quickly as possible, that's what I was talking about with the person on the phone. I don't think it's a secret if any of these students watch this, but is to get for them to get as quickly as possible. So he said that the kind of catch-22 for the classes, uh, and for the curriculum and for the whole thing is, so my whole goal is to keep them interested and to want to keep going, right? To get them
Mhm.
really interested in,
Mhm.
and the key to get them interested, according to what I was told, is for them to understand how all the different classes, different topics connect together. Why? And I'm like, well, I think making connections shouldn't be an issue for me. um, so like, why are you taught this class and this class and this class, and how do they all relate to each other? So once I have the list of all the classes, I can build my lesson plan on linking them all up
Yep.
together. And the
Yep.
more they see the links, and the more going to go, oh wow, okay, so if I learn this from this from this, it's going to allow me to do this, and to translate that into a real world environment. That's what they're really hungry for.
Yep.
And that's, and of course that's, they told me like part of the reason I'm hired is, and part of the reason they expect the students to be interested in me is I have worked around the world, and they're hungry to know, like, how is it in that country for real? Like, what does it mean to be in an office in Singapore, in an office in Hong Kong, in Chicago, in Paris, in London, and you know what really happens.
I think you've got a huge opportunity because you get people
Yeah, it is. I'm excited about it.
who know stuff but can't teach. And I know that you know stuff, and I think you can teach it. I think you'll be able to teach it.
I think so too.
So it's always interesting in
But thank
September
you. I appreciate you saying that, by the way.
with you're welcome, with the kids coming back, new year, new teachers, new environment, but also a whole extra bunch of concerns that are going to mess with their head even more than normal, of masks, no masks, how do we travel to and from school? Things just weren't, they
Not
didn't have
touching
to
each
think
other. I
about.
think it's horrible. This whole thing is just, anyway. So I have opinions about it. Um,
And so do I. And I have opinions about the school system, and I know you do too. But how do you like preparing for all that, and talking to you now, I'm realizing I'm having to think about all that stuff as well. And that's gonna, sometimes I'm just gonna be like, I don't want to do anything. I just don't want to do it. And other times of day, I'm really going to be like, okay, I want to do the best for the children and like make sure I have everything planned and whatever. So I've got to navigate my own waves and rhythms
of course,
somehow. This is all part of going back to school. This is what it's
it
like for a
is.
teacher.
Look at that. We could have spent an hour talking about your shopping list for notebooks and stuff. I'm so glad we didn't do that.
Or actually, and I do want to talk about this at some point, is find
Huh?
out how you're doing with Rome.
I am doing with Rome. Is that what you want to talk about now? Or
Yeah, why not? Let me
I mean,
find
I
out.
thought, was there something else, or
No,
it doesn't matter. I'm doing with Rome the same way I do with everything. I'm using it mostly. It's still a little bit annoying. I mean, it is annoying that there's not an app just yet. They have been putting new features up. They have been, anyway, and by that I mean I'm starting to use it. I have big intentions of learning to know more of the features and using them, and I'm not doing that. So I'm using it however I use it. Just like I was passionately using Evernote for 5 to 10% of its capacity, and I'm probably doing the same thing with Roam.
Rome
And I'm
seems like a nightmare
there's like a forum posting list for all the believers,
because
which
you're a believer, aren't
I'm a
you?
believer. And there's believer hours, so like conference calls that are open hours with the employees of Rome and all the people. And you got to
Wow.
remember, so a lot of this stuff is open. So there are people that are crazy Rome people, but I mean, there's a bunch that have been creating all sorts of plugins for the program to improve all sorts of stuff that I've not even started to look at. I'm barely using. I watched the whole tutorial, and one tutorial because it was just done by some guy. There's multiple. There's multiple courses and tutorials, and while it was very useful to know some of the features and to know how that guy was thinking, who had created a whole productivity system, there's also a whole other, host of school of thought, which is more of the pure Rome thing, or like, no, you don't need any of that stuff. Just write and link things together. Just don't worry about it. So I'm in more of that camp, which is why I got seduced by Rome in the first place. So I still would love to have a plugin to import all my Evernote into it, because it doesn't exist right now. Um, like, for example, so the unlinked references, linked and unlinked references to pages, I love. I want more. I want more linked references. So that's when I do my stuff. I just think about. So what I'm moving progressively more and more of my stuff. So it's my main reference to do things, right, and write things.
Mhm, mhm.
So I use it every day. I have my daily, and I've made a template for my daily journal that I'm sure there's a much better way to do this, because I'm just copying and pasting it every day. But whatever, I'm doing that right now. I have, like, a few finance provisionals, but they're half baked, half done, because that's also how I do it. I have all my writing, so all my drafts for the latest posts I've been writing are all in there.
Okay.
I Yeah, I mean, just every conversation I have, it's got links, references, and I want more linked references. So, for example, one of the tutorial I watched the videos of, which are great. This guy has a productivity system based on half para, half something else, whatever. Um, and he's like, yeah, I'm a bit OCD, so it's all very clean. He filters through all the stuff, so you don't have any unlinked references he doesn't want. I'm like, no, my thing is kind of hot, like, much more on the chaos scale,
Yeah.
and I want things to show up serendipitously.
Randomly,
So
yeah. It does.
it's
The
it's
thing
the
I'm.
main weird thing is to get out of the arborescence thinking of files,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I still am thinking a little bit like that. So the only kind of thing that I've taken from the guy's tutorials is, every time I start a page, I start on the first line, I put some links to other pages, so kind of metadata, if you will. So
So
that.
this is interesting because what you're saying, and to link it all back to the thing we were talking about, some of the things we were talking about before,
Mhm.
it really does sound like you are taking your brain and putting it like it's in Rome as it's
I,
missed
I
because
I'm
the
don't regret
brain
first. Yeah.
seems like, from what I know about the brain, is one bit connected to a load of other things, and Rome sounds like one bit connected to loads and loads of
Yes.
other things in one like massive structure. Now,
Yeah.
if you do that, then hopefully that's going to free you up to do more thinking about cool stuff instead of having to worry about all the crappy stuff, because that's going to be out of your head.
Maybe.
Maybe you
I
have your
mean,
whole like routine stuff in Rome, and then you just like paching, you don't have to think, you just do that, and then you can do more. You can create your lessons on the fly.
maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
The one
I'm
thing
not
that
sure.
puts me off is wanting an app.
Oh, I clearly want an app. I mean, it's annoying that it's still linked to the internet, uh, and it's slow. It's a little slow sometimes to
Yeah.
load. Even my database is not that big, and it's not super slow, and it's generally fine. Um, I mean, I really like it. I love it. I'm happy with it. I'm like, I don't, like, taking time to learn how to use more of a tool. I mean, well, it takes time,
Yeah.
and taking time to think about how it works, to think about how I want to use it, to think about how I think, and to think about how I work. And there is, how do I work? What can I improve? All of that takes time, and I've done a little bit of it. At some point, I was like, okay, just like do stuff, because I I don't know,
Yeah, the execution bit and the thinking about what you're thinking bit.
because I can certainly do with improving. I think anyway, my my routines,
Mm.
habits, for productivity, or for getting things done, whatever. Like, I still haven't read that book, on one hand, but on another hand, I also want the tool to adapt to how I think as best as possible.
Yep.
So it's kind of finding that thing.
Yep. Yep. getting
And
things
moving
done.
fast, just like I spent a bit of time trying to work it out at first, and then I was like, I just like open a page, start writing, and just I'll work it out later. But the working out later is also complicated because you know that once you start using a tool, then it's just it snowballs into
That
using
becomes
it.
the way you use it.
Yeah, and you like to put structures in the beginning. Uh, well, if you don't put them in the beginning, it's complicated to include them afterwards.
Yes.
But now Rome is also made to some people create structures, so you can create all sorts of structure, whether they're ruled or not ruled, to it. But it's also just free forms. You can just do whatever you want, which is
This is
weird. The weird thing on the arborescence is I'm so used to have folders, files, categories, all that, which I sort of have with tags, pages that I use as sort of metadata, and I have sort of organized in a way, but also they're not. And sometimes I'm like, well, how am I going to remember where it is? And then the second thought is like, well, if I don't think of it, then I can't find it. Then maybe it's irrelevant.
it will surface
Because if
naturally
I
as you
think
think of
about
it.
it, I have something to type, and if I have anything to type in the search bar, it'll come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's weird. Writing also it writes in blocks and bullet points, which is how I was using Rome's anyway. So that's good. There's the visual graph that it's kind of useless right now. I don't think anybody's using it, but there's a very interesting idea of what could be done with a visual graph. And at first I was like, oh, I want to purposefully link things together. But now I'm like, I'll just do it as I go.
It'll happen organically, surely.
Yes and no, because you just all right. So I write something.
Hmm.
Cal Newport deep work. Create pages for that. Um, then okay, so now I have a page for Cal Newport. I just did it while typing. Should I? Sometimes I do take a couple of seconds to click on the page for Cal Newport and write the first line that's going to have a couple of pages of metadata going authors, something or other, a few different pages that I know I have that I kind of use as metadata. Books, authors, professors, something like that. Scholars, I think I have as one. Or not. And then if I don't, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But if I go into the page about authors, it won't come up. So it's imperfect. It's as imperfect and as perfect as my brain or the time I want to spend on it makes it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
That's
like
why
everything to be connected, but it doesn't connect everything just yet, just automatically. I mean, I don't have a brain link to it.
This is why I think eventually when and if you read Getting Things Done, I think you'd like it, because it doesn't. It's an approach rather than a tool. And what people have tried to do over the years, even I've seen since I've read it, is build tools for that approach. When the
Yeah.
guy who wrote it is like, doesn't matter what the tool is, just find something that works for you. And sometimes you end up going back to pen and paper, but who cares? It's the approach, not the tool. A fancy tool isn't going to help you if your approach is messed up. And that's one of the things I do talk about in pupils. Just because you know stuff, or just because you know it, if your approach about how you write it is all messed up, you're going to get a crap mark. And I think that's a lot of what we've been talking about today is like the actual execution versus the contextual, the approach versus the habits versus the actions.
When you say that, I'm like, I probably surely have a crappy approach to things. Do I have a crappy approach to things? Is that why I waste time?
Maybe you could. Well, then you raise
Is
the
that
point
why
about
I'm
wasting
not the best
time.
person I could be?
Is it really wasting time? Are you really not being the best person you can be?
I don't know, man. There's so many opportunities for questions in this world. It's silly. I just received this big book from somebody who does. I mean, I'm in the same line of work, but he has this community. Well, he doesn't. Yes, he does. A community with 13,000 people around. The book he just published and I received is impressively amazing. Like, it's really good, and it's useful. It's a reference book. It's big. For everything to do with my job, with his way to do it, that is generic and can be used by everybody. Here's another funny one. it's making me think of, well, and this one, which is also equally interesting. That's what I was reading last night.
I really want to read
Really
that book.
good.
So want to read
He's
it. It's
describing
on my
most of my
list.
life. This guy. Most of my romantic life is described.
But that's
in
why
this
you
book.
got annoyed with his TV series called
What?
Master of None, wasn't it? You
No, I
watched
really
Master of
like it.
None.
I love Master of None.
I thought you loved it and then hated it at the same time. Oh, you didn't. You
Oh,
loved it. I
well,
loved
the
it.
first season did appear. Well, yeah, it was kind of a bit cringeworthy like that because, you know, it's just like describing my romantic life. But, and then I do things like, so, okay, so here's what the thought I was just going to express was,
Yeah.
Cal Newport's very clear on what progresses your career and what you should do and focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's going to forward my career, but I really want to read about The Fool.
Yeah.
I don't think that's an immediate impact on my career, but that's what I want to do. So I need to remind myself constantly that that's what I'm doing. Or I'm going to spend time with my grandfather. It doesn't immediately like pay my rent, but that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why am I not famous? Or why am I not bringing so much money in? Or why am I not doing all those different things? Well, the things that feel like I should be doing or should have by now. And I do have those moments as well. I really do have those moments.
This is the stuff that is
it's human, by the way. It's just human.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly. But you're articulating the stuff that's under the surface with a lot of the pupils I teach. But the difference is you can articulate it; they can't.
Yeah,
you can.
I've done a lot of work for that too.
Yes, and yeah, I think we both have really.
Yeah, I mean, age, experience, and you know, a lot of reading, a lot of coaching, a lot of like development programs, a lot of stuff that is all about looking at how do we function and being able to express it. So yeah. So anyway, I mean to say that for any student watching, don't berate yourself. You don't have that much experience in it. To begin with, you just don't have as much experience in life as we do. It doesn't. I'm not sure it buys you anything, but the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good way to end.
Probably is, yeah.
And if you are watching, write us loads of questions that we can answer. I'm going to be, if any of my pupils are watching, which they might be eventually watching.
Eventually, because like nobody's watching this right now.
Right now, no. But they will, eventually somebody will watch it. I'm going to be coming after people for questions. I've got loads of, I'm going to collect a whole.
On the fun plus side, I'm going to have students I can tell to watch and ask questions as well. Even if they don't watch, they can ask questions.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell them to send them to you because otherwise, you know, I have
send them to me. Send them to me. hello@jamesdesouza.com. Send them to me.
Fantastic.
Cool.
All right. Have a great Sunday.
You too. Until next time.
Yep. Oh, wait. Let me just.